savings, improved customer service, improved order fulfillment, improved margins, increased revenue. It's really a win-win scenario. So we're very excited to partner with these guys and excited for you out there that take advantage of this pilot program to see the results and measure the net financial benefits for yourself and see for yourself exactly how it works. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Supply Chain Innovators. I'm very excited to be joined today by Chad Pawlenty, who is the Director of Sourcing and Business Intelligence at Aero-Space Fasteners and Electronics. How are you doing today, Chad?
Very well. Thank you for asking, and I appreciate the opportunity to spend a couple of minutes here today. So thank you.
Absolutely. I was excited to have you on with me. We're going to be talking about some things in the distribution arena. And to give our audience a little background, who are you surrounded with and what inspired you to go into this field of industrial supply distribution?
Great question. Many years ago, I started off as a plant manager for the packaged ice company I worked in through college. So I was able to rise through the ranks there and enter a line of work I never thought growing up I would ever be involved with. And it was apparent to me from day one all of the widgets and components and pieces of machinery that it requires to drive the modern economy, even to drive something as simple as freezing ice cubes and getting them to customers. Just the thousands and thousands of components and things that we were responsible for cataloging, inventorying, fixing, maintaining. And from there, my interest just grew and grew and grew on how complex everything truly is. You look at a machine like a car, and all you see is the exterior of it, the sheet metal on the outside. And it appreciation to think about what's under the hood and just all of the things and the engineering and design that goes into making a modern machine or our modern economy or whatever it may be. It's just a fascinating, never-ending box of secrets that you get to keep digging through, and I find a lot of enjoyment kind of hacking my way through it. So,
Absolutely. I have an industrial engineering degree. And early on in my career, I was thrown into all these different warehouses and distribution centers to study things and try and streamline. And there are so many things that go into getting something put together and out the door. It's amazing. And there's a lot of areas of opportunities as well, as I'm sure you've seen, and we'll talk a little bit about that as well. But in this distribution arena, what are some of the key trends that you've seen in the last, in recent years?
so there's been a lot of growth, specifically in the world of fasteners and some of the trade groups that are put together. There's a continued emphasis on business intelligence, which is a big part of what I do personally. And now we're starting to see that in tandem with some of the AI initiatives that are out there. I'm not necessarily convinced that AI is this thing that will cure all of the world's problems. And there seem to be some other issues that are brought up with how it's used and what the potential benefits are. But you would be foolish, I think, to not pay attention to it, to not try and leverage some of those capabilities to the advantages of yourself and your company. So it's keeping that open mind for how do we continue to grow and make better decisions with the data that's presented, both internally, externally. I do think there are some companies that are a bit slow to grow and adapt when it comes to making those kind of changes or perhaps investments into their IT infrastructure or their business intelligence systems. That's something that I would expect to see our competitors and others in this field continue to spend time, money and energy on. And then really one of the things that I've seen, because I've had a couple of different jobs in distribution now over the last 8 years, specifically in supply chain management, is the post-COVID world where everybody for the longest amount of time wanted that just-in-time model. I need just enough to make the next set of widgets or the next car or the next electrical enclosure, whatever it may be. And how much of a shock that was when the supply chain just stopped and parts stopped showing up, whether it be from domestic sources or, international exports, whatever it was. The Some folks that have finally come around on maybe we should have just a little bit more in case something goes wrong and be a bit more willing to invest in their supply chain, not only on intelligent just-in-time systems, but in just good old-fashioned, let's get the stock where it needs to be to satisfy the demand and deal with some of those disruptions that popped up over that time frame because they were disruptive across our entire economy. So continuing to emphasize that again, I don't own the company. It's easy to spend somebody else's money, right? Whether that be a shareholder or a private investor, whatever it is. There's a fiduciary responsibility there to do the right thing, but getting all the stakeholders to see that we just can't have one piece in, one piece out. In distribution, you need to provide value, and part of that value is carrying a little bit of stock for items and components and customers that are important, in my opinion. So, getting folks to re-engage with that. and working with suppliers and customers and ownership and key stakeholders who also see that vision is highly beneficial.
Right, absolutely. There's a sweet spot, I feel like, in a min-max situation where you need to have the right amount, not necessarily the minimum amount
Yep.
possible. Like you said, there's things that happen, and it's better to be a little bit prepared and in front of that than to be reacting and scrambling, I think. So, absolutely. What would you say are two or three of the key challenges facing companies today?
You know, in this day and age, turnover, I think, is an issue everywhere that we're all working with. Really the relationships that employees have with their employers has changed dynamically too in this post-COVID environment. So making sure that you're offering a attractive place of work where people feel heard and respected and are rewarded for their time and effort, have the ability to grow, not just lip service, but what can we do to bring in new talent, experience, inexperience, whatever, and provide them with a path to future success and to find some joy and to find some motivation in the work that they do. I also think is an underrated capacity that a lot of companies need to stop and take a look at how they manage the people that work for them and making sure that again they've got a pathway to success, a pathway to prosperity. You don't give anything away, but you put people in spots to let them show you that they're talented, that they're driven, that they want to do well, and then to reward them for their time and effort at that point, I think is has never been more important than it is now because that's what's going to drive loyalty and folks sticking with a company, rather than just being a free agent where they're rotating jobs every 2 or 3 years. And again, bless everybody that has to make the best decision that they can for themselves. But it's hard to develop expertise and subject matter experts when the door just keeps rotating every 12 months, 24 months, 36 months. So I think that's a major component. And then at the same time, again, in this post COVID now tariff driven world, how do you find ways to make sure that you're satisfying all of your key stakeholders in a company? Again, ownership and potentially shareholders and everybody else that has reporting and has results driven by KPIs. Is everybody on the same page? Is there too much fracturing for we got to cut inventory out to get this specific model hit, or are we driving sales in an unprofitable way just to hit a top dollar? Getting everybody to sit down again and try and develop some of that normalcy that business used to have prior to some of those supply chain disruptions has been challenging. And it's something that we're working through every day here, but we try to continually find ways to build that information out, report on it in a manner that employees can understand and digest and have really intelligent conversations on how to make sure we're all marching to the beat of the same drummer. So
Right, absolutely. I talk with senior level executives, and it's a shock to me that some of these people spend 90% of their time hiring and firing people.
yes,
And it's like, it doesn't seem like there's a good infrastructure in place if you've got 70% turnover and all you do is hire and fire people. It
yes.
just seems like there's got to be a better way than that. All the costs and time involved in recruiting, onboarding, training, and all the things, but it's a situation I hear a lot about. So having a good system in place, like you talked about, and expectations, right? Both of those things I think are very, very important to making sure you don't have extremely high turnover. Um, so, in terms of success, what would you say are two or three keys to success in overcoming some of those challenges?
So we often hear things like company culture tossed about, whether in the news or social media or whatever. Well, there is a thing to company culture, and it's not just Hawaiian Shirt Fridays and free coffee and snacks and things like that. It really is trying to form cohorts of employees and colleagues and who are able to, a military phrase, I wasn't in it, but something that I read many years ago was force multiplication. If you have an infantry division, they're stronger when they're supported by artillery and an air force and troops behind them, and a whole network infrastructure that kind of builds out and combines the strength of everyone. That force multiplication of getting people in those silos to work alongside each other well, to respect each other's processes, to understand what everybody's place in the organization is. That's the kind of culture that we're very much trying to build here and getting people to see that everybody should be an asset and a resource to one another and not somebody that's just competing for individual departmental KPIs or goals or whatever. That's the culture. And then again, to bring it back to what we were speaking to earlier, it's having people who again feel heard, feel appreciated. it can be challenging to do that in environments where that culture has not been present. And again, it's been more apparent over the last couple of years as companies have retooled out and had those revolving doors. I forget what the specific number is, but it takes generally an upwards of a year to year and a half worth of somebody's salary and time to get them, quote, up to speed in something that has a professional set of skills and requirements. Well, you think about that in a 70% turnover company, you'll never get there. That door just spins and spins and spins and
Right.
spins, and no progress actually gets made. So, just really focusing on that. It's not lip service, it's the real deal. It's getting people to see the unified vision and making sure they understand the why. Not just how we do it or what the final objective is, why do we do it? When you can build that concept and the understanding in what employees are asked to do, that's generally where some of that native curiosity and exploration comes out, where they get engaged with the material that they're working with. And again, it's just super important in this day and age to get people to understand why and get all those things linked together.
Right, absolutely. I saw a psychological study one time. The number one need of humans is to feel appreciated.
Yeah.
It is like the number one thing, just to feel a belonging and not feel. And unfortunately, a lot of times I think with the situations I've talked about, there's not an understanding of what is going to drive the company forward, right? And that's got to be there, absolutely. And everybody's got to be kind of pulling in the same direction and not have silos of people fighting each
Yes.
other,
Yeah.
essentially. So when you can kind of get on the same sheet of music, it really helps a whole lot. So, we work with ShelfAware and we love partnering with them. There's so many benefits. Can you tell us a little background about your work with ShelfAware and some of the benefits you've seen?
Yeah, we brought ShelfAware into the fold a little more than 2 years ago, specifically driven by an international customer of ours down in Mexico, where we have a particularly challenging set of logistics to have a customer program, a customer VMI at this specific manufacturer's site. Prior to my engagement with ShelfAware, we were using an old legacy barcode system. It's been around for 20 something years. It has a scanner and a flat file that it uploads. And even though it seems silly, the instructions were kind of cumbersome for it. You had to log into a device. Users had to know how to interface with said device. So you had to train them on how to log in, what the screens were, and where to navigate to get the scans in the correct order to send that demand through to our VMI system. And again, now you're talking about international barriers, you're talking about language barriers, which are very challenging. It's you're talking about two different sets of SOPs and instructions. And we were really struggling to maintain that VMI to the level of expectation that both the customer and we had for how it should operate. So I did a bunch of research. I ended up finding ShelfAware, engaging with the team there, and really within 2 months from our first conversation to deploying it to deploying it internationally with about a 5,000 package conversion between inventory we had in the U.S. and inventory we had in Mexico. It was like a light bulb moment. Instantly, the quality of data that came through was better. Instantly, our customer was able to trust and see in real time on the ShelfAware platform how the swipes were coming through and what the inventory levels were and what our stocking strategies were. And it just took all of this peripheral emails and communications and concern and heartburn, and it all just went away instantly. And that was with, again, a very challenging customer that had a high degree, for us at least, was a very extremely high volume one. So working with them on how to deploy that solution as quickly as possible, even to the point where I was joined by ShelfAware staff in Monterey who were able to come down and help make sure that the launch was a success, was one of the most impactful things that I've done with Aero-Space. And I have been beating the drum of how can we get this in front of everyone everywhere as fast as possible, because it just makes that big of a difference when a customer has a complex set of requirements and needs for how their VMI program is going to work. The one of the biggest takeaways too from a lot of people that are worried about the financial end of it, we used to have just massive cycle count variances at this specific site, high five figures, which for us was, and for the customer was not something that anybody wanted to deal with. Because well, again, what seemed to be such a process of using the barcode scanner and all the equipment, when all of that's away and you just make the station blink, pick, swipe, go, as they say in their material, that's it. If you can make the light blink, you have a successful transaction. being able to get that cycle count variance down to, 5% of what it was is just a tremendous win as well. And boy, does that get buy-in from the customers and the stakeholders on what a good move this was to put in place. So between the professionals that I've worked with in ShelfAware, the stores we've been able to launch it at, customer programs we've been able to launch it at, I am just extremely optimistic for the future. And, we put it in with another customer last fall that's been highly successful. And if anything, the only frustrating thing is we don't have it in more places, but we're working as hard as we can to get it in front of everybody that we possibly can. It's a wonderful system. It's made my life as a supply chain guy so much easier. My level of heartburn and anxiety with that customer down in Mexico was at an all-time high. And it's at the point now where it's almost a pleasure to manage. So I have a high degree of appreciation for what the ShelfAware folks have done and will continue to speak good words about them whenever presented the opportunity.
Thank you for that. Everything I see about it, it streamlines things and it helps the customer and it helps the supplier
Yes.
as well. And it also helps the sales group as well from things that I've seen. So it's just a really win-win-win scenario from everything that we see and promoting it and deploying it as well. So I really appreciate your background and everything you've shared with us. What are the best ways for people to connect with you?
Super easy. LinkedIn is always a good one. I'm usually on there a couple of times a week poking around and all the different things that I'm subscribed to. So that would be a great way to do it. And then if anybody links to our website, I'm on there as well. It's very simple. Our company is called Aero-Space Computer Supplies or Aero-Space Fasteners Electronics, but our URL is super simple. Just www.ascs.com. We'll bring you to our website, which we actually will be relaunching soon with some additional capabilities and things to look at. But those are two of the generally best ways to find where I am and what I'm doing. So
Excellent. In this last question I asked of all of my guests, it's more of a general question. What would you say as a final word of advice for our listeners out there watching or listening to this episode today?
approach the uncomfortable without fear of failure. One of the things I teach a lot of the folks that I've had the pleasure of hiring, mentoring, training over the last 10, 15 years is you got to learn how to run to the fire, not from it. Human instinct in nature is to try and avoid conflict, try and avoid what's uncomfortable, to really only work with the things that we know because we believe we have a higher degree of success and understanding. If you can break that instinctual pattern to try and avoid the challenging conversations, the difficult customer requests, the things that seem like they are going to be high stress, high test, and learn how to embrace those as challenges and opportunities. All of those challenges present opportunities. I personally have benefited many times from finding whatever the most difficult thing is at the place that I work and saying, I want to be good at that.
Right.
That's the thing that somebody has to figure out. And then by being able to dive into it, and again, without feel of failure, the worst things that happened, that could happen, it doesn't work out, and you move on to something else. But so many people are afraid to get uncomfortable. Just learn how to get into the weeds and make a living there. And you'd be surprised how resilient and capable that you can be when you challenge yourself constantly like that. So just embrace the unknown, do the weird stuff, do the uncomfortable things, and your utility as an employee only grows, your value as an employee expands wildly, and you'd be surprised the doors that it opens up. I'm doing many things today I never thought I would 10, 15, 20 years ago because every one of those challenges was an opportunity. So, and I like to think that I have the foresight and bravery to run after them. So,
Absolutely. No, great words of advice. Looking for the things, the challenges, and working to solve those very much helps your career, and it also helps you, learn new things, to try out new things. Not everything's going to work 100%, but yeah, I totally agree with that. Look for problems that you can solve, step in there, and it will help the company, obviously, and then
yes.
help you as well. So great advice, no doubt about it. I love talking distribution. It's like a hobby for me, I guess. And it's been a lot of fun talking with you, Chad. Thanks for joining me today.
No, I appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Absolutely. That's going to do it for this episode. Thanks for listening or watching, everybody. And we will see you again on the next one. Take care.